Hi students, good evening. Welcome to VerandaRace. Today we have thorough discussion of the Hindu editorial. So let us start the session. March 21st Hindu editorial discussion. Let's start with it. So we have two people waiting. Good evening everyone. Good evening. So today what I've done is I've taken the Hindu editorial and made some comprehension questions out of it. 21st March Hindu editorial discussion. Let's start with it. So today is again a discussion on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Let me tell you, I have announced in the class, today's morning class itself, that if you are a race student, you can submit your article to Prakash sir. I'll be validating the article. I'll be giving feedback on the article. On the next page, you have to write at least 400 words on two topics I've given: cryptocurrency advantages and disadvantages, and India's take on justifying the India's take on Russia-Ukraine conflict. So you can submit your articles there, and it will be changing every 2 days. I'll be giving more topics like that, so you can submit your articles. Let's start. So it is about, so I have made some comprehension questions. Would you like to read the questions first? Let's read the questions first. The first question is, what is common in the visits by NATO and Quad allies of the US? So this is the question, first question. What is common in the visits by NATO and Quad allies of the US? Next question is, what did Japanese PM Fumio Kishida made clear in the annual summit meeting? This is the next question. Next is, what is the frequent visits of diplomats indicating at? So frequent visits in India, what is it indicating? And the fourth question is, why is it necessary for New Delhi to acknowledge any Russian violation of human rights? So these are the four questions. So let us move to the passage, and it's a very small passage as we generally discuss. So let's start. It is certainly no coincidence that a string of foreign leaders, ministers and officials are descending on New Delhi this month. So it's no coincidence that many foreign leaders, ministers and officials are coming to New Delhi this month, as the Russian invasion of Ukraine continues for its fourth week and without a clear end in sight. Very easy passage it is. The questions will be challenging, I guess. So it's the fourth week of Russian invasion of Ukraine, which is in sight, and it is nowhere coming at its end. So it is no coincidence that a string of foreign leaders, ministers and officials are coming to New Delhi this month. There are summits with the prime ministers of Japan and Australia, virtual summits, and one soon with the Israeli prime minister, and visits by the US Under Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, as well as European foreign ministers and delegations. So there are summits with the Prime Minister of Japan, Australia, virtual summits, and one soon with the Israeli Prime Minister, and visits by the US Under Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, as well as the European foreign ministers and delegations. What the visits by NATO and Quad allies of the US all have in common? So we have got the question, answer the first question, right? So what the visits by NATO and Quad allies of the US all have in common is their planning at short notice and putting discussions on the India's stand on Ukraine at the top of their talks. So we will just go to the question and see if we can answer those questions. It's too hot in Chennai, let me tell you. So let's go to the question. So the answer is, what they have in common is their planning at short notice and putting discussions on India's stand on Ukraine at the top of their talk. So let's go to the question, if you can answer that question. What is common in the visits by NATO and Quad allies of the US? Their planning at short notice. That's common. They have planned at a very short notice coming to India and putting discussions on India's stand on Ukraine at the top. So answer will be A and B both. This will be the answer. Clear? This will be the answer. Moving back to the question, let's see the next question as well. What did Japanese PM Fumio Kishida make clear in the annual summit meeting? Let's go back to the passage. Even Japanese PM Fumio Kishida, who had a full bilateral agenda to discuss with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at their much delayed annual summit meeting, arrived in Delhi on a very short visit. So, Japanese PM Fumio Kishida, who had a full bilateral agenda to discuss with Prime Minister, at a much delayed, the annual summit meeting was supposed to happen much earlier, but it was a much delayed annual summit meeting. He arrived in Delhi on a very short visit and made it clear, this answers the second question, made it clear that finding a common position on Ukraine and telling India that it must not condone means what? Overlook or disregard. Condone means overlook or disregard Russia's action was a priority. So, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida made it very clear that finding a common position on Ukraine and telling that India must not overlook Russia's action was a priority. So, let's go to the second question. What did Japanese PM Fumio Kishida make clear in the annual summit meeting? He said that India must not overlook Russia's action as a priority. Correct. He said that Russia must withdraw its forces from Ukraine. Not correct. He said that the stand by India is unacceptable. Not correct. Both A and C is not correct. So only A will be the answer. Only A will be the answer. Clear? Moving ahead to the next question. Let's see the next question. What's the next question? What is the frequent visit of diplomats indicating at? So there has been some frequent visits in India by the diplomats. What is it indicating? Let's go back to the passage, the second part of the passage. Yeah. The message from the West is clear that India must shift its position on 3 counts. First count, to do more at the UN. So the West is very clear in one part that India has to do something more at the UN, where New Delhi has consistently abstained from resolutions criticizing Moscow. So New Delhi has not taken any decision in criticizing Moscow and to join the sanctions regime. So what is sanctions regime? Sanctions that have been put by the West on Russia. So the West wants India to join the sanctions regime by applying sanctions on Russia and to avoid contracting for more Russian oil or sending civil or military supplies to the Putin regime until the war ends. So the West wants, the NATO and the Quad allies, they want that India should avoid contracting, making contracts for more Russian oil or sending civil or military supplies to Putin regime until the war ends. The flurry of visits, see this word is very unclear because I saw it on Google as well. Flurry here means, furry word as an adjective means fur-like, like a fur. But it says the flurry of visits, which means the frequent visits, which the author means, which I am not very clear at. But let us assume that the meaning is flurry of visits means the frequency of visits, a lot of frequency of visits. Let us assume the word has this meaning because I tried finding the meaning of furry, which means the fur-like. Always it shows fur-like. But let us assume that the author wants to say the frequency of visits. So, the flurry of visits, comments by officials and the press statements made by diplomats indicate. So, we have got the answer to the third question. This frequency of visits, comments by officials and the press statements by diplomats indicate that tensions between Russia and the West have reached a point of no return. So, continuously the people are visiting in India. Press statements are being made by diplomats, and this indicates that tension between Russia and the West have reached a point of no return, and New Delhi is being asked to make a very pointed choice between them. What is them? Between the West or Russia. The West or Russia. While there are several reasons why New Delhi, look, we have got the answer to one question. So let's go back to the third question which we had. 1, 2 and 3. What is the frequent visits of diplomats indicating at? That it's time India acted wisely on choosing the right ally. I don't think this is the answer. New Delhi is being asked to make a very pointed choice between Russia and the West. That's them again. That's correct. Tensions between Russia and the West have reached a point of no return. Correct. So both B and C will be the correct answer. Clear? Let's move to the next question. Let's see the next question. Why is it necessary for New Delhi to acknowledge any Russian violation of human rights? Why is it necessary for New Delhi to acknowledge So this is question number 4 actually, right? Why is it necessary for New Delhi to acknowledge any Russian violation of human rights? Let's go to the passage. So we have read till this part. Okay. So while there are several reasons why New Delhi has declined the attempts to steer means to lead. So while there are several reasons why New Delhi has declined the attempts to steer it from its course on Russia that are linked to its strong partnership with Russia. So what it means is New Delhi has tried several reasons why it has declined the attempts to lead from the course on Russia that are linked to strong partnership with Russia. There are some global interests that the Modi government must consider more closely. See, in fact, Modi government is trying to build its relationship with Russia, but there are certain other global interests that the Modi government must consider very closely. We have not got the answer to the fourth question. Let's move ahead. The civilian toll in Ukraine is mounting. Civilian toll means number of casualties, which means number of casualties. The civilian toll in Ukraine is mounting, and while Russia has denied reports of targeted attacks on schools and theaters, so Russia has denied that there are any, has not yet fully clarified its end game. It means that Kremlin is a citadel. Citadel in when we talk about Kremlin, we talk about Russia. It was an erstwhile part of Russia, but we say the Kremlin means Russia for that matter. So let's go to the question, and why is it necessary for New Delhi to acknowledge any violation of human rights, especially as, so this is the answer, as the Kremlin has not yet fully clarified its end game. End game means the final plan. Let's go to the fourth question and the last question probably, I guess. Yeah. So as the Kremlin has not yet fully clarified its endgame will be the answer, as Russia has yet to take any further steps, as Russia has already attacked schools in Ukraine. All these are absurd answers. This will be the correct answer. You see, the point is when you read the questions first and go to the passage, that helps you answer the questions very easily. So, second, while India has expressed concerns over nuclear safety, it must be willing to make this an issue with Moscow. So, India has expressed concerns over nuclear safety. It has declared that it is concerned about over nuclear safety. It must be willing to make this an issue with Moscow if necessary. Another area is the threat of chemical and biological warfare. And while the Indian representative spoke strongly at the UN Security Council about the importance of fully implementing the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention, so what happened is the Indian representative spoke strongly at the UN Security Council meeting about the importance of fully implementing the Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention. The government must be prepared to vote on the issue and call out any side that violates these. Call out means neglect or remove from its support. So whatever the circumstances may be, the government must be prepared to vote on the issue and call out any side that, so even if Russia violates the its take on biological and chemical warfare, it must vote out, it must call out Russia even. As the war progresses, more such debates will arise. As the war with Russia and Ukraine progresses, more such debates will arise, and New Delhi must retain its ability to judge and shift its position from being neutral and abstentionist. So when the war progresses, many such debates will come whether it should take side of Russia or the West. New Delhi must retain its ability to judge. New Delhi must not be neutral and abstentionist. Abstentionist means abstaining from decisions. So New Delhi must shift its position from being neutral and abstentionist to a more wholly seized means controlled of the issues, and as a leading nation that is able to exercise its strategic autonomy on matters of principle when required. So author says that New Delhi must not always be neutral and abstentionist, not always abstain from taking decisions, but sometimes it has to take the full control of the issues, and as a leading nation should be able to exercise its strategic autonomy. Strategic means in terms of strategy, it should be self-sustained on matters of principle. Principle means value system when required. So we have understood that the author wants to state, so this is the topic which I gave you, the justify India's take on Russia-Ukraine conflict, which I gave in the article today. So you need to, if you wish, you can, those students who have not got the topic, there are two topics I have given. One is justify India's take on Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the other is advantages and disadvantages of cryptocurrency. You can submit it to Prakash sir in our Race Academy. And this is what we did today. We discussed 4 questions, and I'll be back with more questions of this kind, more discussion of this kind. I hope you enjoyed the session a lot. Thank you so much. Please submit your articles to Prakash sir, and I'll give a strong feedback to you. Thank you so much.